السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ونتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So we're continuing with our class, The Journey to the Hereafter, and this is more specifically about the description of Jannah. And I think the last time we stopped is we were talking about, or at least based on my notes, we finished talking about the children of Ahlul Jannah, and then we also talked about what was the last thing we talked about? Did you talk about anything else?
The description or demographics of Ahlul Jannah.
Demographics, yes, we talked about the demographics of Ahlul Jannah, but also about the Jannah being something not, like, the Prophet ﷺ talking about the Jannah as, in terms of, it's surrounded by things that are disliked, and then the hellfire is surrounded by things that are favorable, I guess. We talked about it a little bit. So this second section over here is talking about, yes, a bit more about demographics also, but the type of people when it comes to the Jannah. Because quite often, this is also, you find this in the books of Aqeedah, because in the end this is our belief, our creed. And so when they talk about the Jannah, we have been told by the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that there are certain individuals that will be in Jannah and certain individuals will be in the hellfire. Whether they have been described by characteristics or described or specified by name, which means that we need to talk about the ruling regarding bearing witness, the permissibility or impermissibility of dictating or pointing at a person and saying that this person, individual, so-and-so will be in Jannah or so-and-so will be in the hellfire. But to summarize things, this is something from the unseen. In the end, we haven't seen Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't tell us who's going to be in Jannah specifically. It's generally in the unseen. So when we're talking about a person going into Jannah or the hellfire, that can be described, or when you're dictating, saying a person will enter Jannah or the hellfire, that can be described into, I guess, two general categories. The one is just a general description, right? A general witness that people with certain characteristics would enter Jannah or enter the hellfire. So for example, when we say the believers will enter Jannah, right? That's agreed upon, there's no difference in opinion. When you say the people who have, the disbelievers who, if they received the message correctly and they still refused it and fought against it, those will not enter Jannah. That's still also something that is very general, which is also accepted. Now, there are also some actions that we can, which are kind of considered descriptions, that we can say whoever does this will enter Jannah. So for example, when the Prophet ﷺ would say about, for example, fasting Ramadan, right? Whomever fasts Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban, in belief and seeking the reward, then his sins are forgiven. And when a person's sins are forgiven, then he would enter Jannah. And so these are general, so we're not specifying. That's the general, that's the first section or category. The second category is more now you are specifying. Specifying, so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, the child of so-and-so will enter Jannah. Now when it comes to that, we should know that we should never ever specify that a person is in Jannah or in the hellfire unless we have evidence. Is that clear? So for example, Abu Lahab, we can say that Abu Lahab is in the hellfire because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. We can say that the Prophet ﷺ is in Jannah because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specified that. We can say that Khadija is in Jannah. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ told us. So there is a reason we're saying, but we cannot say, for example, no matter how much we love a certain individual, we would say, the so-and-so or the so-and-so scholar or my grandfather or my father is in Jannah. We can't say that. However, we can say we hope inshallah that he's in Jannah. Two different things. One is affirmative, the other one is you're making dua, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enter Jannah, we hope that he's in Jannah. Right? So we fear for we hope for the pious and we fear for the sinners. So this is just a general rule. Now the reason I'm mentioning this is because we're going to talk about, because we're talking about the description of Jannah, we're talking about how difficult it is to enter Jannah or how easy. I wanted to talk about some of the people that the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned would enter Jannah, so that we would know how were they. Because these are the individuals we know they will enter Jannah, so they obviously have entered Jannah because of specific characteristics or qualities that they have. And it's important for us to try to emulate them. because these are the pious predecessors. These are the ones that the Prophet ﷺ had seen them and had witnessed that they would enter Jannah. So it's obviously something about those individuals, something they have done that warranted, or that that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded them by entering Jannah. So we're going to talk about those individuals, and I want you to think about their characteristics. How were they, and so forth. And it's by all means, it's not a history class, but it's good to know those names, because it's important for us to have role models. When we think of Jannah, what did these people do? What made them deserve Jannah? This is something that's important for us to think about, because in the end, this is something that we desire. And quite often, if we are talking about a job, right? We always ask people who went to the interviews, what did you do? How was the interview? What made you get that job? Same thing. Practically, we have to think, what did they do that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded them with, and then to enter Jannah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us Jannah. Now, there are certain characteristics that are mentioned. For example, the Prophet ﷺ would talk about, Sayyid Shabab Ahl Jannah, or Sayyid Kuhul Ahl Jannah. So Sayyid in the Arabic word over here can mean the chief, the head, the leader, or a person of distinction. This is what Sayyid means in this context. So the first one, so this entire category is talking about Sadat Ahl Jannah, right? The individuals who are persons of distinction in Jannah, or the heads or the chiefs or the leaders in Jannah type of deal. So the Prophet ﷺ, the first one we're going to talk about is Sayyida Kuhuli Ahl Jannah. So Al-Kahl over here, Sayyida, which means that they are the chief or people of distinction from the Kuhul. Kuhul is the age group. Kuhul is Jama'. Kahl is the singular form. And a Kahl essentially refers to an age between 30 or 34 until 51. Okay? So this is considered the age of Kahl. So middle-aged approximately. So anywhere between 30, 31, all the way to 50, or 34 to 51. So the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith rated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, he said, Abu Bakr wa Umar Sayyida Kuhuli Ahl Jannah min al-awwalin wal akhirin. He specified, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Abu Bakr and Umar are Sayyida, which means two. Sayyida is for two. Kuhuli Ahl Jannah, from al-Kuhul. Kuhul, which means that age category. But there's a question. What's the age of people in Jannah? 33. But we're saying this is, Al-Kahl is from the age of 31, 34 to 50. So,
The age in life in dunya.
Okay. So many of the scholars, when they're talking about this, they were talking about when the Prophet ﷺ was mentioning this, he was bearing in mind their age now. Okay, not their age in Jannah. Because in Jannah we're all the same age. There's no old, there's no young, we're all the same age. We're going to talk about that in a bit, inshallah.
The worldly age, right? Like the age in this world. That's the age you're talking about.
How old were you when you entered Jannah?
No age, right?
No, there will be.
There will be?
Yes. But you're stuck at that age.
Sorry?
But you're stuck at that age.
Oh.
I shouldn't say stuck, but you're constantly with that age. And it's the age of 33. Because that is considered the perfect age between strength and maturity. Wallahu a'lam. Alright, now the second one is when the Prophet ﷺ also talked about, now all these individuals are people in Jannah. So this one is Sayyida Shababi Ahl Jannah. So they are the chiefs or the head or the people of distinction from the Shabab, which means the youth, the young. So the Prophet ﷺ over here, all know this, he's referring to his grandchildren, Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn. So the Prophet ﷺ had said, Al-Hasan wal-Husayn Sayyida Shababi Ahl Jannah. Al-Hasan and Husayn are the people of distinction, the chief, the head of the Shabab, which means the youth of Ahl Jannah. And in fact, another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Arada li malak, right? A malak had come to me, arad, which means kind of came to me. Ista'dhana rabbahu an yusallim alayh, who had asked his Lord to give me salam. So this angel took permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go to the Prophet ﷺ to give him salam and to give him the glad tidings. وَيُبَشِّرُنِي فِي أَنَّ الْحَسَنَ وَالْحُسَيْنَ سَيِّدَا شَبَابِ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ. That both Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn are Sayyida, the head, the chief, the people of distinction from the youth of Al-Jannah. Now, similar to how there are obviously men, there's also women. Right? So there's Sayyidati Nisa'i Ahli al-Jannah. Now, by the way, this status of a person of distinction or being a chief or head, really the true ones, because I know we have people who we consider have status or people of distinction, but the people with real distinction are the ones who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises. Right? Are the ones who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bear witnesses that they are from the chiefs or the leaders or the people of distinction in Jannah. And so we know that the Prophet ﷺ does not talk out of his whims and desires, but rather from revelation. And so this is what we should seek and strive to be among those. And you just look at those characteristics, like I look at Abu Bakr and Umar, how are they, Hassan, Hussein. And now over here we're going to talk about the females. And most people know them, right? They kind of mentioned 4 specifically. So who are they? Khadija, Asiya, Maryam, and? Yeah, we only mentioned 3.
No, she said
Asiha?
So Asiya,
Fatima, you said Fatima.
did we say Fatima? We didn't say Fatima.
No, I mean, and the 4th is Fatima.
Fatima, that's true. So that's the 4th one. And this comes directly from a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. And this is Abdullah ibn Abbas. He had mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ drew 4 lines in the ground. So he kind of just drew 4 lines. And then he said, do you know what this is? قَالَ مَا هَذَا تَدْرُونَ مَا هَذَا? Do you know what this is? And so they said, Allah wa Rasulahu a'lam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger know best. So he said, أَفْضَلُ نِسَاءِ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ. So he said, essentially pointing at these 4 lines are the best of the women, or the chief or the leader or the women of distinction in Jannah. And he said Khadija bint Khuwaylid. So the first one he said Khadija, and then he said Fatima bint Muhammad, Fatima the daughter of Muhammad, wa Maryam ibnat Imran, Mary the daughter of Imran. So who is he referring to?
Virgin Mary, whatever.
This is Maryam, the mother of Ismail, right? The mother of Jesus. Wa Asiya bint Muzahim, right? And Asiya, the daughter of Muzahim, who is the wife of Fir'aun. So he mentioned those 4. And out of those 4, the best 2 are Maryam and Khadija. And this is also from a hadith the Prophet ﷺ he had mentioned. So the Prophet ﷺ he said, خَيْرُ نِسَائِهَا, right? The best of their women are Maryam, وَخَيْرُ نِسَائِهَا Khadija. Right? So he said Maryam and Khadija in this hadith. And then out of all these, the one who is the top is Maryam. Right? And this, because we're not surprised, because we remember in the Quran this is mentioned when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the angels, and it's mentioned in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاكِ وَطَهَّرَكَ عَلَى نِسَاءِ الْعَالَمِينَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to Maryam, اصْطَفَاكِ, which means He's chosen you from among the women, وَطَهَّرَكِ, and He purified you. And so He gave her subhanahu wa ta'ala a specific status. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned in a hadith, he said, Sayyidatu Nisa'i Ahli al-Jannah ba'da Maryam. Right? So he said, the women, Sayyidat, the women, the chief or the leading or the women of distinction in Jannah after Maryam. So Maryam is the top. So after Maryam, he said, Fatima wa Khadija wa Asiya ibn Imran. So he mentioned those other 3 afterwards. And so those really, to be honest, those 4 women, they can be looked at as the role models, right? The ones that are considered of the figures from females. They have reached the epitome and the peak of being praised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they were the perfect female worshippers. They were the perfect female Muslims in the eyesight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it's Khadija or Asiya or Fatima or Maryam. May Allah be pleased with all of them. And I want you to think about, what have they done? Right? Think about their life. Whether it's Maryam, who dedicated her life to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also had believed in Allah and His messengers. And she bore the responsibility of taking care of a child, believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she protected her chastity. So Maryam, may Allah be pleased with her, she was special, she was different. She had protected her chastity. She would seclude herself to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, He said, وَصَدَّقَتْ بِكَلِمَاتِ رَبِّهَا وَكُتُبِهِ. She believed in the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His books. So this is talking about complete submission. So over here, this essentially the essence of it is complete submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing whatever pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was Maryam. And then Khadija radiallahu anha, she's the one that believed believed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when others kind of hesitated. She's the one that had helped the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam become sturdy in his position. She supported him with everything she could, whether it is emotionally, or whether it is financially, or even morally, whatever the case is, she did the best she can. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we had mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the palaces in Jannah, when Jibreel had given her glad tidings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving salam to you, and He's promised you a house in Jannah, qasab, which means a huge pearl that is, what's the word I'm looking for? That is void from inside, that's empty, right? It's just a bubble of a pearl. قصب لا صخب فيها ولا نصب لا صخب, which means there's no loud noise, ولا نصب, which means tired. So no hardship in it. And so this was Khadija. And then Asiya binat Imran, who was the wife, Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had used her as one of the perfect examples for the believers. وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَرْأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave an example for the believers, who the wife of Fir'aun. Why? Because she chose a house in Jannah. She preferred a house in Jannah as opposed to a palace in this world. She chose to go against a tyrant who she knew that would either will destroy her, or in the worst case scenario, kick her out of the palace, so she would lose everything. So she sacrificed everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and she picked to be closer to Allah than to be with Fir'aun. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had rewarded her with a house in Jannah.
Is she the one who took care of Musa alayhi salam?
She's the one that convinced Fir'aun to adopt Musa. She said, قُرَّةُ عَيْنٌ لِي وَلَكَ. She said, don't kill him, take him so that he would be a soothe of the eye for me and you. Which kind of interestingly indicates that Fir'aun was impotent. Fir'aun was impotent, and yet he claims that I am your Lord. And so how can a Lord have defects? Right? It's quite interesting. And so this was Asiya. And then Fatima, obviously we know she is the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, and if you read her biography, it's a beautiful biography of submission and worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so those are the role models. So those are the Sayyidat Ahl Jannah. Alright, now there are obviously other people that the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned in Jannah, and we know the famous 10, right? Ashar Bashirin al-Jannah, and those were mentioned in Hadith. So you guys all know them, right? Very quickly. Come on, first 4 Khalifas, who are they? Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, right? That's easy, right? The first 4. So we have 6 more left. Who are they?
Hussein and Hassan.
No, in that one hadith. We talked about Hassan and Hussein, that's separate. So they're called, by the way, they're called the 10 Ashar Bashirin bil Jannah, the 10 who have been given glad tidings, because they were all mentioned in one hadith, in a row. Alright, this is why they're called the 10. Now there are more Sahaba that were given the glad tidings of entering Jannah. We're going to talk about them, we're going to mention them. But those are talking about Ashar because they have been mentioned in one hadith. So they included the 4 Khalifas, and then who else? Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. That's 5, sorry. So say what?
Zayd bin the first.
Not Zayd.
First converted, Khalif's cousin.
Warqa ibn Nawfal?
Yeah.
You're talking about Warqa ibn Nawfal? No, he's not included in this hadith.
Bilal?
Not Bilal. Bilal is separate hadith.
Was it Sa'd ibn Mu'adh or Sa'd on
No, the Sa'd, well,
which one of them?
not Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. So Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. And then the other one is Sa'id. Sa'id ibn Zayd.
That's it.
Sa'id ibn Zayd. So far we have 6. Abu Ubaid ibn al-Jarrah. Talha. Right? And Abdul Rahman ibn Auf. And I'm missing one more.
Wasn't there from the Ansar?
So hold on a second. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, Talha, Az-Zubayr ibn Awam, Oh, we didn't mention Zubayr. That was Zubayr. So it was Zubayr ibn Awam. So Zubayr, so each one has, subhanAllah, like, a special quality about them. So for example, I'm not going to mention all of them, but just a couple of them. Zubayr ibn Awam, he was known as the Hawari Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so what does Hawari mean? Supporter, the one who's around, the entrusted ones. Exactly. So Hawari Rasulullah, so he picked him. He said, Zubayr Hawari, لِكُلِّ نَبِيِّ Hawari, وَزُبَيْرْ Hawari Rasulullah. So that is Zubayr. And then Ubayd ibn al-Jarrah, the Prophet ﷺ said, لِكُلِّ أُمَّةِ أَمِينَ, for every ummah, there's a person who is Ameen, the one who is the most trustworthy. And so he said, وَأَمِينُ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ Abu Ubayd ibn al-Jarrah. The one who is the most trustworthy of this ummah is Ubayd ibn al-Jarrah. Now it doesn't mean that other Sahabas are not trustworthy. No, but this is a bit of more of a distinction. Okay. In fact, if I can't remember, I think it might be him. When Umar ibn Khattab in his Khilafah, so this is after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, he would send gifts to Abu Ubayd ibn Jarrah, and he would tell his servant to watch what he's going to do with it. So Abu Ubayd ibn Jarrah would, once he would get the gift, he would give it to the poor and the needy and his slave and so forth. And so Umar ibn Khattab, when he went to visit him and he entered his house, he found that he had almost nothing in his house except, like, the bed that he lies on and a few things. And so Umar ibn Khattab, he kind of wept. He said, we all changed after the Prophet ﷺ except Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. Right? Which means that all of them have been, they started indulging in worldly things. And worldly things mean that they started buying better beds, right? Having, more luxurious things. This is what it means. If you notice, Abu Ubayd ibn Jarrah, if I remember correctly, that's him. He would just still lie on his old straw mat, right? There's nothing in the house but just the one or two objects. And so this is how they used to be. And so Umar al-Khattab is saying that the world changed all of us after the Prophet except Abu Ubayd ibn Jarrah. So this is what it means, essentially part of meaning that he is the Amin al-Ummah. And then Talha, he is the, let me something quickly about him. So the Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith, أوجب طلحة, which means he is deserving of Jannah because of what he has done also in the battlefield. So the Prophet ﷺ in the battlefield of Uhud specifically, Talha ibn Ubaydillah, he actually went down and asked the Prophet to step on his back to climb on a rock because they were being attacked. But he also had defended the Prophet with every part of his body, when he's being attacked, that almost every part of his body has a wound from affliction from the battlefield. And in fact, one of his arms, I can't remember which one, actually is paralyzed because of one of the injuries that he had. And so because of his sacrifice, the Prophet ﷺ said that he's Awjab al-Jannah. So this just some of the terminology, but it's amazing. You should look at their biography in details. It's beautiful. It will give you a clearer picture of really who our role models should be. Those are our ancestors. Those are the people who paved the way, for the later generations. They are the ones that practice Islam. They were the ones that the Prophet ﷺ had raised and had trained. And so they practiced Islam in the best way possible. All right, now now there are other individuals that the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned that they would enter Jannah. So two of them, for example, one is Ja'far ibn Abi Talib and the other one is Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. Now I'm not going to mention all of them, I'm just going to mention a few because those we hope inshallah are individuals that we will see in Jannah. But we should understand also their characters and who they were. So Ja'far ibn Abi Talib is the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. And Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib is the uncle and his brother. He's the brother of the Prophet ﷺ.
How is he brother?
Nurse fed from the same woman. I knew it was going to be confusing a little bit. So the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith, he said, I entered Jannah, فَنَظَرْتُ فِيهَا, and I looked into it. فَإِذَا جَعْفَرْ يَطِيرُ مَعَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, Ja'far is flying with the angels, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had replaced his arms, because they were cut off in the battlefield, with wings that he would fly with in Jannah with the angels. And then he said, and he looked and he saw Hamza, he was leaning on one of the beds in Jannah. So this is how we know that they were both going to be in Jannah. And in fact, the Prophet ﷺ said, Sayyid Shuhada Hamza. So the chief or the head or the most what's the word? I guess the leader, the most prominent of the, or most distinctive of the shuhada, the martyrs, is Hamza. All right, now the third one is Abdullah ibn Salam. Now Abdullah ibn Salam, well, I guess we shouldn't go into many details, but the Prophet ﷺ said he's one of the 10 of the 10th in the Jannah. And then we also have Zayd ibn Haritha. The Prophet ﷺ had mentioned, he said, I entered Jannah, and he ran into, or he was met by a slave woman, or a girl, like a working girl in the Jannah, and he asked for who do you belong to, and she said, I belong to Zayd ibn Haritha in Jannah. And then there's also Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl. So Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl was, by the way, he died before the Prophet ﷺ. He died before the Prophet ﷺ. However, he was one of the people who, in the time of Jahiliyyah, he only worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there were certain characters in the time of Jahiliyyah, it was very obvious for them that those idols are not true gods. So they would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. And so Amr ibn Nufayl was one of them. And then there's Al-Harith ibn Nu'man, and Bilal ibn Abi Rabah, since you mentioned him, the Prophet ﷺ, he had mentioned, he said, I heard your footsteps in Jannah, what do you do? And so Bilal said, there isn't a time during day or night that I would make wudu except I would pray 2 rak'ahs. And then there's Abu Dahdah, right? When the ayahs, where the verses of the Quran were revealed, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ. Who is it that would loan Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a beautiful loan, he would multiply it for him. So Abu Dahdah donated his best and most beautiful of gardens that he had, right? And so Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, كَم مِّنْ عِذْقٍ مُعَلَّقٍ لِإِبْنِ دَحْدَحٍ فِي الْجَنَّةِ. So how many, عِذْق is the branches, that are heavy with fruits. How many of those are in Jannah for Abu Dahdah? Because of what he had sacrificed. And it's beautiful to see how the Sahaba would react quite often with the verses of the Quran when they receive it. It's very organic, they immediately act upon it. So when Abu Dahdah had heard that verse, he got emotionally involved with it, and he just implemented it. He said, when he heard who would loan Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a beautiful loan, he would increase it. It impacted him, and he believed the verses of the Quran, and he just donated that garden that he had. Now another person I'm going to mention is Waraq ibn Nawfal. This is the last one I'm going to mention. Waraq ibn Nawfal is also mentioned that he would enter Jannah. Waraq ibn Nawfal was the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. When the Prophet ﷺ had first received revelation, and Khadija radiallahu anha, she took him to her cousin to try to help him figure out what's happened. And Warqa had become a Christian, but not the Christianity of that time, but the original Christianity, the one that Isa was calling to, right? With the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so he was a bit different. He's one of the few monotheistic Christians that were left behind at that time. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the hadith, لا تسب ورق بن نوفل, do not curse Waraq ibn Nawfal, فإني قد رأيت له جنة أو جنتين. I saw that he has a garden or 2 gardens, meaning the hereafter. So those are some of the people that have been mentioned in Jannah. Now, because we're talking about those individuals and the actions and the deeds they did, and we talk about some of the rewards we get, we have to understand that Jannah is not a price, right, for our actions. Right? It's not a price for our actions. Because no matter what we pay, what we do, it cannot be a something. And a price, I mean here, how much this costs, I'm going to give you. If I give you that money, you have to give me this, right? I did this, I deserve this now, right? Because I paid for it. It's mine, it belongs to me. So Jannah is not like that. Is that clear? Because the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned, he said, لن يدخل الجنة أحدا منكم لن يدخل أحدا منكم الجنة لن يدخل أحدا منكم عمله الجنة لن يدخل أحدا منكم عمله الجنة. So none of you, his actions will permit him into Jannah. And so they asked, not even you, O Messenger of Allah? So the Prophet said, ولا أنا, not even me, unless إلا أن يتغمدني الله, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala envelopes me or dunks me in His mercy, right? With the blessings and the virtues of His mercy. So, however, sometimes you read other verses in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, تِلْكَ الْجَنَّةُ الَّتِي أُورِثْتُمُوهَا بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. This is the Jannah that you will inherit because of the actions you performed. So now it's confusing, right? Are you confused yet? So I just said that the Prophet ﷺ had said that Jannah, right, is not the price for your actions. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that this is the Jannah, you'll enter it because of your actions. So is that contradictory?
No.
Why not?
Because to deserve Allah's mercy, you have to do the action, the ta'ah that He asked for. It's to be worthy of the mercy.
Okay.
Our actions are the minimum to ensure that we are actually meeting the guidelines as far as entering in this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. It's really precisely, and He can forgive, He cannot, and He can accept, He cannot accept. So it is end of the day, it's mercy that we ask for, not for our actions.
But the verse says that the cause of us entering Jannah is our deeds.
The deed causes mercy, and you cannot get mercy if you're not doing anything of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking you to do.
This is more of a cause and effect. سبب المسبب, right? سبب دخول الجنة العمل الصالح, right? It's not the price to enter Jannah, two different things. There's thaman and then there's sabab musabbab. So thaman, which means if I pay the price, I have to enter. You have no two ways about it. But cause and effect are different, because you can have the cause but might not necessarily have the effect. But in the end, if you want to look at it, is that cause and effect is from who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's by His mercy that He guided you to that action in the first place. And it's by His mercy that He accepted that action that you performed, even though it might not be as complete as it should be, even though it might not be as in the way that is befitting as an act of worship towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His mercy accepts those actions no matter how few it is, and He rewards it by much more and more plentiful. This is all from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that connection now clear? Yes? Sort of. All right.
You're saying that Muhammad said your action takes you to Jannah.
So the action can never be a price that you pay to enter Jannah. Okay? It is the cause that you enter Jannah by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He had guided you to that cause. He enabled you to perform that cause. He turned your heart towards that cause. And then He accepted from you that action. All this is from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that clear now?
Yes. Now I may be doing a good deed and you think Allah may not be accepting it?
That's not what I said. But yes, you might be thinking that you're doing a good deed.
Thinking, right, yeah, that's it.
Right?
It may not be,
But in reality, it might not be a good deed.
but Allah is asking.
Right? Wallahu alam. But there are sometimes...
Are you saying that it is Allah who guides us to do the action and that's why we're able to do it?
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates those things for us. Right? He allows it, and it's from His mercy. And He, in fact, guides it toward, because the reward of every good deed is that He enables you to do another good deed. And this is from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. But also the mercy includes that small action that we perform is rewarded for immensely and a bit more. Actually, a lot more. And that even though if our actions are not, in a way, in the end we're dealing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter what we do, we have not fulfilled the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but He still accepts it from us. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, now, so the next thing we're going to be talking about is the description of the people themselves who enter Jannah. Now we know that when we enter Jannah, we're going to be in the, obviously not, so we're going to be in the most complete of images when we enter Jannah. And the most complete picture is the image of Adam alayhi salam. because he was the first of creation. He's the one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created with his hand, and He has perfected him. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, فَكُلُّ مَنْ يَدْخُلِ الْجَنَّةَ عَلَى صُورَةِ Adam. Every person who would enter Jannah is in the image of Adam, meaning not looking exactly like them, but in the image. And then he explained, he said, طُولُهُ سِتُّونَ ذِرَاعًا. His height is 60 arm lengths. Right? His height is 60 arm lengths. فَلَمْ يَزَالَ الْخَلْقِ يَنْقُصْ بَعْدَهُ. And so he said the creation continues to get shorter ever since the creation of Adam. So when we enter Jannah, our sizes were going to be in the original form that Adam was created in. But it's not just that. And so even like, so our outside would change, but also our age is a different age. But also internally, we're a bit different. This whole thing with our hearts will be purified. There is no such thing as hatred or animosity or envy or jealousy. All these do not exist, but it's just pure friendship and love amongst the inhabitants of Jannah. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he was describing the people of Jannah who had entered. He said, أَخْلَاقُهُمْ عَلَى خُلْقِ رَجُلٍ وَاحِدٍ. Right? Their manners are upon the manners of a single individual. Like there's no differing, meaning there's no difference between them. على صورة أبيهم آدم, in the image of their father Adam. ستون ذراعا في السماء, 60 arm lengths up in the heavens. Now part of their beautiful image that they're going to be in is that the Prophet ﷺ said, يَدْخُلُ أَهْلُ الْجَنَّةِ جُرْدًا مُرْدًا. That the people of Ahlul Jannah would enter jurda, which means they have no hair on their body. Right, so there's no hair on your body. And murda, it comes from amrad, which a person who doesn't have any facial hair on their face. And then he said in in the same narration, he said mukahhalina, right? كأنهم مكحلين, as if they have kuhl. Kuhl is what, mascara?
Wasn't that a medical treatment?
No. What's kuhl? Kuhl is mascara, right?
Black.
Or eyeliner.
No,
Eyeliner, right? It's as if they have eyeliner on their eyes. So this is talking it's a type of purification, obviously, but that's the form. But also there are other things that would change. So for example, the extremities that sometimes come from us, such as phlegm, right? Whether it's phlegm or mucus, or even going to the bathroom. Those things do not come from us. So there are things with us in Jannah that are going to be changing. So we're purified from external and from internally. But another interesting thing is that the people of Jannah also will not have characteristics of the people of this world. For example, we don't sleep in Jannah. So the Prophet ﷺ said, النوم أخو الموت, that sleep is the brother of death. ولا ينام أهل الجنة, and the people of Jannah do not sleep. Because there's also something with sleep. Whenever you sleep, it's a temporary pause in your enjoyment. Is that right? If you're enjoying something, you're having pleasure with something, and then you fall asleep, that's a temporary cessation or a pause of that enjoyment. But in Jannah, it's continuous enjoyment. It doesn't stop, which includes also not sleeping. All right. Now some of the na'im, which means the luxury, how would you translate na'im? Some of the comforts, the pleasures. Some of the pleasures of the people Ahlul Jannah. Now, obviously, the pleasures that we encounter in Jannah are different, unlike the pleasures we encounter here. So the reality that we see around us, and unfortunately, we become very attached to it. When we have some sort of enjoyment, and then we're indulging in it, it's completely different when we are not seeing it and not aware of it. And this is important to realize, because when we know the experience of the worldly things enjoyment, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about the enjoyment that is going to be waiting for us, most people are more inclined to indulge in what is present as opposed to what is delayed. We have this delayed gratification issue in the modern world that we live in. Many of us are not willing to be patient for delayed gratification. We want immediate gratification most of the time. And so the rewards of the Jannah are obviously delayed, not just delayed by a little bit, but delayed by a lot. We will never enjoy them or start experiencing a little bit of them until our death. And this is perhaps why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had extensively in the Quran brings this about a lot, discusses and tells us and reminds us of the pleasures in Jannah and how compared to the ones in the world it is nothing. And the virtue and the status of the pleasures in the hereafter are uncomparable to the one in this world, because this is important to keep us kind of motivated to leave what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to leave in this world, not indulge in it, so that we can attain a greater reward. Now some of these things that we, if you want to search, there are certain variations or things that separate the pleasures in the hereafter from the pleasures of this world. So I'm going to mention a few of them today, inshallah. I think we might just wrap up based on those. So the one is that the pleasures of this world compared to the hereafter is very minute. The pleasures of this world compared to the pleasures of the hereafter is minimum, very minute. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly says in the Quran, it says, قُلْ مَتَاعُ الدُّنْيَا قَلِيلٌ وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لِمَنْ اتَّقَى. That the enjoyment, the pleasures of this world is little, and the hereafter is better for those who have taqwa. So it's little. All these pleasures that we encounter compared to the hereafter is nothing. And the Prophet ﷺ even reiterated that in a hadith. He said, Wallahi, by Allah, مَا الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ, the comparison of this world compared to the hereafter is nothing except إِلَّا مِثْلَ مَا يَجْعَلْ أَحَدُكُمْ إِصْبَعَهُ, except like how a person does this with his finger, وَأَشَارَ بِالسَّبَّابَةِ, this finger. He said, فِي الْيَمِّ, فِي الْيَمِّ is in the well. How you put it in the well or in the water. When you dunk your finger in the water and you take it out, right? How much of the water comes out? So he's saying that amount compared to what is in the hereafter is that. So this gives you a bit of a perspective of what really kind of enjoyment is waiting for us in the hereafter, right? What is like a completely unparalleled. So that's one thing. And so when this is the reality of things, when the pleasures or the enjoyment of this world is so minute compared to the hereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala scolds those who prefer these worldly pleasures that are almost nothing and favor them instead of the ones in the hereafter. And so this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَا لَكُمْ إِذَا قِيلَ لَكُمْ انفِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ اثَّاقَلْتُمْ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ أَرَضِيتُمْ بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. And the one I mentioned is فَمَا مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ. So this is referring to the time period when the Prophet ﷺ, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was ordering the people, the Muslims, to defend themselves, right? And to fight against the disbelievers. And so he's saying, why is it when it's told to you to go out for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, اِثَّاقَلْتُ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ, you almost went heavy into the ground, you kind of buckled down, you don't want to move, you're like, no, I'm not going to do this. And he says, أَرَضِيتُمْ بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, are you pleased with the worldly life? أَرَضِيتُمْ بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا مِنَ الْآخِرَةِ, instead of the hereafter? He says, what are you doing? This is a small sacrifice, is nothing compared to what is waiting for you in the hereafter. فَمَا مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيا فِي الْآخِرَةِ, this worldly pleasures in this world compared to one hereafter is nothing but something that is small in amount. Now the second comparison between this world and the hereafter, the pleasures, is that the pleasures in the hereafter are much far better in their nature and quality. They're much better in their nature and quality. So the clothing of the people of Jannah, the food of the people of Jannah, the drink of the people of Jannah, the decorations that they wear, the palaces that they have, are completely different than it is in this world. Different means in its nature and quality, right? So the quality obviously is much better. There is no comparison. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, he had mentioned in a hadith, he said, مَوْضِعَ صَوْتِ أَحَدِكُمْ, salt is I shouldn't say a whip, but you know how a horse rider, sometimes they use a flog to kind of hit the horse with? How big is it? It's about this big, right? And this thin. The Prophet ﷺ said, the space that this occupies, the flogging stick, the space that it occupies, right, in Jannah. So if you ever you see how much land and area it takes in space, he said that amount of space in Jannah is much khayrun min ad-dunya wa ma fiha, is much better and more khayr, much better is I guess the best transition I have is much khair, is much better than this entire world and what's in it. See that limited space we're talking about in Jannah is much better than this entire world and what's in it. So this is referring essentially to why, like, its nature and quality. Now the third difference is that the hereafter or Jannah is has no impurities. It's free from all impurities and any sort of things that are considered affliction or reduction compared to this world. So the food that we eat in Jannah compared to the food that we eat here. So the food that we eat here and the drink that we drink has consequences. What are the consequences?
In the bathroom.
One is going to the bathroom. Sometimes bad breath, right?
Indigestion.
Sometimes aspects of indigestion, sometimes health issues, digestion issues perhaps. But for example, even if you're thinking about alcohol, right? This worldly alcohol in this world, it affects your brains, whether sometimes it gives you a headache, hangovers, it affects your health, it's not very good for the stomach. And so all these things, in the hereafter, the nature of the food and drink, right, is completely different. We don't have any of those aspects. So when we eat and we drink, we have no need to go to the washroom. Absolutely not. It doesn't transform into those things. This is why we don't need to spit. This is why we never have any foul smells. And even the alcohol in the hereafter is in its nature, it's completely different, whether it's in color or quality or purity. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described it, He said, بَيْضَاءُ لَذَّةٍ لِلشَّارِبِينَ. It's white, that is very ladha, which means beautiful in taste for the ones who drink it. لَا فِيهَا غَوْلٌ وَلَهُمْ عَنْهَا يُنْزِفُونَ. Right? لَا فِيهَا غَوْل, which means there is no, how should I translate this? غَوْل. I think we'll come to a transition later. But لَا غَوْل, which means no intoxication, doesn't hurt your head. Right? لَا فِيهَا غَوْلٌ وَلَهُمْ عَنْهَا يُنْزَفُونَ. And they will not be deterred away from it. So even the milk that we drink has different descriptions and all these things. So there's absolutely nothing that is, if any sort of impurity. Everything in this world has a side effect, right? It's something that's enjoyment and it goes away. That doesn't happen in the hereafter. But anyway, so that's what is it? Is that a third difference? The third difference. All right. Now the fourth I kind of just mentioned is that the pleasures or enjoyment in the world will end. However, the enjoyment of the hereafter does not end. It's always continuous. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned in the Quran. He said, he was describing the worldly. When he was describing the worldly pleasures, He called it Zahrat al-Hayat al-Dunya. He described it as a flower. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describe it as a flower? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the worldly enjoyment as a flower.
It withers away, right?
It dies at the end.
It died good. It's nice. It is beautiful, but does it last? Does it live long? What happens to it afterwards? Dies and it's gone. Right? In fact, some people consider it looks ugly afterwards, after its death. And so that is different than the hereafter, or what there is does not end. It does not cease to end at all. Now, the last one we're going to mention in this category, the difference, that working or indulging in the worldly pleasures and working for it will lead to regret in the hereafter. I mean, working for it and sacrificing your hereafter, essentially, right? So you forget that you need to work for your hereafter. So indulging that, if you're having this worldly pleasures as your focus and indulging in it and following it and trying to attain it as much as you can, will make you forget the hereafter, which will result essentially in a regret in the hereafter. Okay, and entering obviously the hellfire. However, the opposite is true. If you neglect this world, I'm not saying we should, but if your focus is the hereafter and you're doing everything to build the hereafter and just do the bare minimum of this world, are you going to lose anything? Are you going to lose anything? Ya Sheikh, are you going to lose anything?
So afterwards?
Okay, we have two scenarios. I'm going to work for this world, okay, and neglect the hereafter. Am I going to lose anything?
Yeah.
Yes.
Obviously. All right. I'm going to work for the hereafter, and worst case scenario, I'm not saying you do this, but I'm going to neglect this world. I'm just going to purely work for the hereafter. Am I going to lose anything?
Yes.
Am I going to lose anything?
Yes.
What am I going to lose?
I mean, you have basic responsibilities that you have to fulfill for this
Yeah,
earth.
Sheikh, I'm talking about you're going to fulfill your responsibilities. But I'm talking about ignoring, indulging in this world.
Actually, or not indulging.
Indulge.
Yeah, I mean indulging, right? I'm not saying leave your obligations. That's just, you're leaving obligation, which means you're not obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right?
It's balance, basically.
But I'm talking about indulging and focusing and building, right? You're going way and beyond and above. All right, I don't do that. I'm just doing the bare minimum, but I'm focusing on the hereafter. Am I going to lose anything? No, right? So that's one of the other differences.
You're completely forgetting the dunya. You have to do whatever you have to do, but not overindulgence.
It's not a matter of forgetting the dunya, by the way. The dunya is here for a purpose.
Yeah.
It's a means to an end. It is your cropland that you crop to reap the fruits later on, right? It's the bridge I'm using to cross to the other side. I'm not going to build a house on a bridge. Would anybody build a house on a bridge? But this is what we're doing. A lot of people are just building the house on the bridge. They're not crossing to the other side. We're just sitting there, they're building the house and they're staying there. No, we have to use this bridge, but we need to use it wisely, not get distracted by things that are around, right? So,
Yeah. So like, just think about the hereafter and
your focus is the hereafter, right? Your focus is your center. It's Allah-centric, right? Your focus is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam. All right, we're going to stop here, inshallah. The next one is talking about the food of the people of Jannah and their drink. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.